What's up, Tasty Nation? Welcome back to Mike and his whiteboard. My name is Mike, this is my whiteboard, and today we're going to discuss an interesting strategy, which is the covered put. So this is a strategy that's going to pretty much flip everything we know on its axis, and it really has to do with shorting stock and selling premium against that short stock. So when I first learned that you could actually short stock without owning it, my mind was blown. I was like, how can you even possibly do this? This gives us the ability to make money when a stock's going down as opposed to a stock only going up. And that's one of the beauties of options and these strategies that we can form around these certain strategies. So let's get right into it, and we'll talk about the covered put, which is essentially shorting a stock and selling a put against it. And we'll discuss why it's considered covered and what we're looking for with this strategy as well. So when we're looking at a covered put, our assumption is going to be bearish, as you see here. When we're shorting stock at all, our assumption is going to be bearish, because if I am selling stock or shorting stock, I want that stock to go down in price to give me the ability to buy it back for a lower price. If I sell stock up here and the stock drops and I can then buy it back at a lower price, the difference is going to be my profit potential. So basically what we're doing here is we're creating the opposite of a covered call. So instead of owning shares and selling a call against it to lower our cost basis, what we're doing is we're shorting shares and we're selling a put against this to reduce our short basis. So it's a little interesting how it all flows together, but we'll get through it all here. So we've got an example of shorting 100 shares of stock at 75, and we're looking at shorting a put at the 65 strike for $2 in premium. So the reason why this is considered a covered scenario or a covered put is because of the fact that we're not technically trading this put naked. So if I were to trade this short put naked, number one, it would be a bullish assumption or neutral to bullish, because I would want the put to stay out of the money. So I would want the stock price to be anywhere in this range here. Additionally, if the stock price ends up going below 65 when I'm just trading a short put, I would have to buy 100 shares of stock if I held that through expiration. But since I am covered, I have short 100 shares here. If this put gets assigned, I would no longer have to purchase the shares because of the fact that I would have these short 100 shares right here. So my position would be flat if the stock ended up going down below 65, which is why it's considered a covered put. So let's talk about some of the aspects down here. So we've got max profit on the left, we've got break even, and max loss along the right here. So what's interesting with this scenario is that the break even and max loss are going to be a little bit different than a traditional opposite covered put, or I'm sorry, covered call. But the max profit's going to be pretty much the same. So the max profit, all we're really doing is we're taking the difference between the stock price that we're shorting it at, the strike price that we're selling the put at, and we're adding the premium collected. So with that said, we've got a stock price of 75, a short put that we're selling at 65, and we're collecting a $2 credit for that put, which brings our max profit to $1,200. And really, the reasoning why is because if I'm shorting stock at 75, as you can see by this risk profile graph here, our profit's going to flatten out as long as the stock gets to 65 and below. And that's because of the fact that I'm short stock at 75. If I was just trading the short stock, my max potential profit would be $7,500 for 100 shares. And that's because I know that a stock cannot go below zero. So if the stock goes to zero, I would reach my max profit of $7,500. But since I'm selling a put, which effectively gives me the right to buy 100 shares at the 65 strike, my max profit just without even taking the credit into consideration would only be $1,000. And that's because there's a 10-point difference between my stock that I'm shorting and also the strike at 65 that I'm shorting the put against. So you take that $1,000, you add the $2 credit, which is really $200, since each put contract, or any contract for that matter, is worth 100 shares of stock theoretically. So we add these two values together, we get our max profit of $1,200. Now let's take a look at the break even here. So you can see my break even is actually above the stock price, which is really interesting. Normally when we're selling premium, we're used to seeing our break even go down. And we talk about cost basis reduction, and we kind of think of it as a way to reduce our cost basis to the downside. But since this is a strategy where we're actually shorting shares of stock and selling premium against it, we're actually improving our short basis to the upside. So basically what we've seen here is that we've got our stock at 75. We've collected $2 in premium for selling the short put. So I've effectively increased my short basis, or benefited my short basis, by 2 points. So now my break-even point is at 77. And let's just think about this really quickly. If I'm shorting the shares at 75 and the stock price ends up going to 77, if I were to buy back those shares, it would be a $7,700 cost. So if I'm shorting shares at $7,500 and then I'm forced to buy them back, or I choose to buy them back at 77, that's a 2-point difference, or a $200 difference. But since I'm collecting $200 in shorting this put down here, even if the stock price does go up a little bit, I've got this break even of 77, which would bring me to a 0 P&L on this position. Given the fact that I'm collecting $2, the stock's currently at 75, so even if it does go to 77, I would end up breaking even here. Now, one thing that's very interesting is the max loss. So as we know, a stock cannot go below 0. So with the covered call or just shorting a put outright, our max loss can be considered undefined because we're really not sure what it could be, because there's no defined level unless we're looking at the 0 level. But when we're looking at shorting shares of stock, our max loss is going to be truly undefined. And that's because of the fact that there's no cap to the upside that a stock can go. You look at something like Priceline or Amazon or Google or Chipotle for that matter. All of these shares started somewhere, maybe in the low 20s, low 30s, and now they're hundreds of dollars worth of stock. So basically, there's no cap to the upside. We're never really sure where a stock can go to the upside, although we're definitely sure that a stock cannot go below 0. So for that reason, when we're looking at a covered put scenario, and a strictly covered put where we're just selling shares of stock and selling a put against it to improve our short basis here, we are looking at a max loss that is truly undefined. So let's go to the next slide here and we'll analyze this a little bit further. So let's look at some potential management when we're looking at a covered put. So very much like a covered call, it's pretty much the similar or same exact thing we're going to do, but just the opposite. So when we think about looking at a covered call and flipping it on its axis for a covered put, you'll see that a lot of these stay the same. So let's say the stock goes down. We're not going to really do anything. This is a good thing. Again, if I'm shorting shares at 75 and the stock ends up going down, as you can see, my profit's going to increase until we get to 65, where it'll be capped out. So if the stock price goes down, I'm not going to manage my position in any way, because that's a good thing. If this short put ends up completely in the money and the stock ends up at 50, that would mean that I would have reached my max profit by expiration. If the stock stays the same, I'm also going to do nothing. This is another good thing. The reason why we sell premium against things like this, whether we're shorting shares with a covered put or buying shares with a covered call, the reason why we're selling premium is to reduce our cost basis reduction. Since we never really know where a stock price may go, there is one thing we know, and that is we can sell premium against it to reduce our basis. So if the stock price stays the same, I'm totally okay with that. If the stock stays the same by the expiration date of this option, of course my 65 put is going to stay out of the money, and I'm going to have my shares at the same exact value. So what does that mean for me? My put's going to expire totally out of the money and disappear from my account. That means I get to keep that cash that I originally collected of $2, and my basis on my shares is going to be, the short basis is going to be benefited by $2, and I'm going to be able to use that $200 cash in a different way. I'm still going to have those 100 shares. Maybe I'll look to redeploy another put at a different strike, maybe the same strike. Depending on the volatility, maybe I'll choose a different expiration. It really all depends. But at the end of the day, if the stock stays the same, that's a good thing, and for that reason, I'm not going to do anything. Now, let's talk about what happens if the stock goes up. So, if the stock goes up, maybe I'll roll the put up, or maybe I'll roll the put up and out. It's really going to depend. So as you can see by this image here, we've basically virtualized the stock price going from 75, let's say this is up to 80. So what I could do is, depending on how long we're into that expiration cycle, I might choose one of these two things. So let's say I created this covered put scenario and 2 days later the stock shot up from 75 to 80. I still have the same assumption, so I'm not looking to get out of the trade. Maybe I would be though, so it's important to understand what your assumption is overall on the underlying. But if I still have the same assumption and I believe that the stock's going to end up going down eventually, maybe I'll look to roll this put up in the same expiration cycle. So maybe I would look to roll it from 65 to 70, collect a little bit more premium, and give myself an even better break even to the upside. Or let's say we've got 5 days to go and I was just about to close out this position, but now the stock shot up 5 points. Maybe I'll look to roll the put up and out. So maybe I'll look to roll this put up to the 70 strike, but into the next expiration cycle. As we know, with further expiration cycles, there's going to be more time there, more extrinsic value, so I'll be able to collect a higher credit than if I were to look in that same expiration cycle. So these are a few things that I might consider if the stock goes against me or the stock goes up. Now, let's talk about a synthetic equivalent on the next slide here. So we've been talking about how we can use a covered put to take advantage of cost basis, but there is another solution, and that might be a poor man's covered put. So both of these have the same bearish assumption, but what's really cool is that they have very different aspects of the trade. So with a covered put, since I'm just selling premium, I'm looking for an IV contraction. I would look to place that trade in more of a high IV environment because I want to collect as much as I can in that short put and have that short put contract in price or contract in IV. With a poor man's covered put, however, I'm replacing those stock shares, the short shares, with a long put. So effectively, I want an IV expansion. As you may or may not know, long options are more affected in further expiration dates than they are in the shorter term expiration dates. So if I'm buying a long put in April and I'm shorting one in February, an increase in IV is going to benefit my position here. And one last thing is that if we're not comfortable with this truly undefined risk in a covered put, maybe I'll look to do a poor man's covered put because that is defined risk. Since I'm buying an option and selling an option against it, the most I can lose in this scenario is just the debit paid. So let's wrap all these together with some takeaways here. So the very first takeaway with covered put is that it's just short stock in a short put. Our break even is aided to the upside, so unlike other things where we're looking to sell premium to reduce our break even to the downside, a covered put is just the opposite. We've got a short basis that we're looking to improve upon by increasing that up. And lastly, this is truly undefined risk. So if we're not comfortable with that and the volatility scenario is right, maybe I'll look for a replacement in the poor man's covered put. So thanks for tuning in. This has been an overview of a covered put. I've got support email here, so if you've got any questions or feedback at all, shoot it over to support@doe or or you can tweet me at DoeTraderMike. But the shadow traders are up next, so stay tuned. Hey everyone, thanks for watching our video.
If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up or share it with a friend.
Click below to watch more videos, subscribe to our channel, or go to our website.